Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we take a peek inside the Inquisition with the Empire of the Ordo Malleus. A spoiler warning to begin, as today we will be referencing events from the Warhammer 40k story Grey Knights by author Ben Counter. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. And with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay, now lately I've been in a Grey Knights kind of mood, really wanting to get back into the mystique and character of that legendary chapter. And so I've got a whole bunch of old school Grey Knight stories to dive into in my spare time. So be prepared for me wanting to talk about the Grey Knights over the near future, that is for sure. And almost immediately upon diving into the story Grey Knights by Ben Counter, I was really struck by a description of the Grey Knights' home of Titan, and more importantly Saturn in general. As we know, Titan was and is a moon of Saturn that was chosen to be the home of the Grey Knights Legion, as decided by Malcador and the Emperor. It was hidden into the warp to enable the Marines' chosen time to build a legion, or a chapter as it would ultimately turn out, to prepare for the war after the heresy. And well, that's exactly what they did, of course, with Titan becoming one of the most mysterious yet famous fortress monasteries in all of the lore. And yet, I was really surprised to see upon reading Grey Knights that actually Saturn itself plays a far larger role outside of simply its moon Titan. How Saturn has in fact become a bastion for the entire Ordo Malleus. And in fact, far from a simple bastion, it is essentially the Ordo's headquarters, its own mini-empire, completely and utterly controlled by the Inquisition. And that makes sense. The Grey Knights are of course part of the Inquisition, and in particular the Ordo Malleus, its military arm if you will. Now, whether or not they should be is a question for another day, but so it is. The Ordo Malleus has claimed Saturn for itself, and my word, they have most certainly been busy. The Ordo Malleus had taken the rings of Saturn shortly after the inception of the Inquisition, and had turned them into its own unofficial domain. The Lord Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus ruled Saturn's moons, absolutely, because that was the only way they could ensure the security of their facilities. The Malleus controlled some of the most dangerous artifacts, texts, and people in the galaxy. The immensely complicated geometry of Saturn's rings means it was all but impossible for any enemy force to penetrate the thousands of turbo laser defences that bristled from asteroids captured by Saturn's gravity. The Ordo controlled the only reliable way in and out of the rings, the naval fortress on the outermost major moon, Iapetus. Mimas, the closest major moon to the vast swirling mass of Saturn, was disfigured by an immense impact scar covering a quarter of the surface. Built into that crater was the Inquisitorial prison, where the worst of the worst were held in complexes of isolated cells with psychic wards woven into the walls, guarded by gun servitors and a regiment of Ordo Malleus stormtroopers. Enceladus, the next moon out from Mimas, housed the Inquisitorial Citadel, a vast and imposing palace where the Lord Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus held court, and the most senior of the Ordo's Inquisitors maintained personal estates. Tethys was the location of the Librarium Demonicum, the repository of dangerous knowledge gathered over thousands of years of fighting the darkness. The Librarium was completely hidden from the surface, Thousands of void-safe cells and galleries of crammed bookshelves filled a sphere hollowed out of the moon's core. Untold millions of tomes, data slates, scrolls and picked recordings were refrigerated to preserve delicate pages and unstable data cores. Access to them was only given by the authority of the Lord Inquisitors themselves, and the more restricted sectors formed some of the most sensitive locations in the galaxy. Titan, the largest moon, concealed beneath its thick orange atmosphere the immense fortress monastery of the Grey Knights, covering the surface as if the whole moon had been carved with a pattern of towers and battlements. The docks of Iapetus, the furthest major moon, extended kilometres out into space, and were always hosts to whole roosts of cruisers, escorts and battleships, including the strike fleet of the Grey Knights and enormous Imperator-class battleships requisitioned from the Battlefleet Solar. It was only by controlling this miniature empire that the Ordo Malleus could ensure the safety of the terrible knowledge it collected and the dangerous individuals it captured and imprisoned. Now, this may be a pretty boring piece of description to some of you, but this to me is the bread and butter of what makes the lore so great. Why reading the novels enhances the setting so much. Here, we get an insight into the Inquisition, the most mysterious and secretive order in the entire Imperium. And not only that, we get an unparalleled description of just how the Ordo Malleus itself operates. How it has its own mini-empire within the solar system. And how it has claimed and created Saturn into one of the most heavily fortified places out there. For so long when we've spoken of Titan, or heard of it, it's felt like this isolated bastion of secrecy. Far off and unknown, the Grey Knights by themselves against the galaxy. And even the Grey Knights' relationship with the Ordo Malleus has always felt a little tense, to say the least. Like the Grey Knights always seem to view themselves as their own separate power, resenting an Inquisitor's arrival. And maybe that's true, yet here, with this description, we can see that while yes, Titan itself is the Grey Knight's domain, it's actually really immersed and surrounded by the rest of the Ordo Malleus. That Titan is a part of this mini-empire, not truly isolated at all. And in actual fact, it's at the very heart of the Ordo, and intentionally so. The presence of the Grey Knights and Titan has obviously been used as the very bedrock from which to base the Ordo's power. The Ordo Malleus had taken the rings of Saturn shortly after the inception of the Inquisition, and had turned them into its own unofficial domain. Everything about Saturn suited the Inquisition's purpose. The presence of Titan and the Grey Knights was obviously a major factor in deciding to take this place. And then, that geometry of Saturn's rings, which they used to fortify into an impenetrable barrier. The immensely complicated geometry of Saturn's rings means it was all but impossible for any enemy force to penetrate the thousands of turbo laser defences that bristled from asteroids captured by Saturn's gravity. The Ordo controlled the only reliable way in and out of the rings. So it all makes absolute logical sense. A ready-made castle just waiting to be fortified. And so that's exactly what the Ordo Malleus has done. We learn here that the innermost moon closest to Saturn, Mimas, has been used as the Ordo's most secure prison. Next to that, the moon of Enceladus houses the Inquisitorial Fortress, the headquarters of the Ordo Malleus itself, and we're told where its senior Inquisitor Lords have their personal estates. Then Tethys, the location of the Librarium Demonicum, undoubtedly one of, if not the biggest repositories of knowledge on chaos, outside the Eldari's Black Library of course. It's a complex that's completely hidden from the surface, and locked behind countless void shields, even despite its location, where only the Lord Inquisitors themselves may tread. And then we have Titan, where we learn the fortress monastery covers virtually the entire surface, something I had never actually considered. And then finally Iaptus, the naval fortress, which guards the only reliable route in and out of the inner rings, where the Grey Knight's fleet rests at dock, and the might of the Ordo Malleus's battleships, including a whole host of Imperator-class vessels, too lies in wait. This is a huge amount of detailed information to learn, and something that really helps flesh out our understanding of the Inquisition, especially the Ordo Malleus. So often we see those individual Inquisitors striking out on their own, perhaps inquisitorial fortresses or strongholds somewhere out there, in an unknown far-off sector, or even at rare times upon Terra itself. But rarely, if ever, do we see what is an Ordo's true power base. Learn just what is there, and how it functions. Honestly, it certainly makes you think the Ordo Malleus may be the most powerful Ordo within the Inquisition. Or at the very least, it makes you wonder what the other Ordos may actually have out there. But honestly, for me, I struggle to think how they can compete with this. A veritable fortified mini-empire, built around the fortress monastery of the Grey Knights themselves. That is hard to beat. Sure, the Ordo Xenos has the Death Watch, but the Death Watch are scattered across the galaxy in small kill teams at watch stations, and their watch fortresses certainly don't seem to match this kind of scale. Even the Death Watch's primary watch fortress of Thalassa Prime, which is located all the way out on the eastern fringe within Ultramar, barely houses 5 watch companies in total. So the Death Watch certainly don't appear to have played a central role in the heart of the Ordo Xenos' power base, a la the Grey Knights have for the Ordo Malleus. At least from what we know. And again, it definitely makes me reevaluate the Grey Knight Inquisition relationship. How that strong independent streak within the Grey Knight Grandmasters we see doesn't actually portray their position within the Ordo Malleus itself, and how actually the Grey Knights, the Emperor's own chapter, appear to be the very foundation from which the Ordo Malleus has built its home, turning it into one of the most important, most impressive fortresses out there. But as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think of this glimpse within the Inquisition? Is the Ordo Malleus's claiming and fortifying of Saturn as impressive as I think? Is it truly a power base of the Ordo that the others would struggle to match? Does it reveal the Ordo Malleus is perhaps better united than its compatriots, and was forming your power base around Titan the logical move? Does it reveal in truth a far closer relationship with Titan and the Grey Knights than we so often see in the lore? And does it make you reconsider the Grey Knight Grandmaster's independent attitude? Or does it actually reveal reason as to why the Grandmasters do seem to cling on to it, that they strive to retain Titan as their own, independent when surrounded by the Inquisition? Or maybe perhaps was that why the Ordo Malleus claimed to the rest of Saturn? That it was an early move to ensure the Grey Knights remained loyal, bound to them. As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.